Well, 2024 has already been a really interesting year for hockey, as we've just had the inaugural game for the PWHL, the Professional Women's Hockey League. The game saw New York take on Toronto, and it was actually incredibly interesting. I was extremely impressed by the play I saw, especially the physicality, which I was quite shocked by. We'll get to that in a second, though. I will give a bit of background on the PWHL. It's the newest attempt to create a full-time professional women's hockey league in North America. It's replacing the PHF, the Premier Hockey Federation, and as admittedly an outsider, this feels like the most legit attempt to create a full women's league that's sustainable in the future. There's the corporate backing, there's what feels like just a really high degree of involvement from athletes, and I think part of that's also due to the pay. The average salary is 55 grand, and just generally it seems like there's a lot more fan interest than there has been in the past, and I really think that women's hockey did need a clean slate in a new professional league. That being said, early on there was definitely some concerns, and I think it was largely due to the sort of short time frames. They had to get this league up and running in basically 6 months, as the players made it clear that they didn't want to lose a year of hockey just to get the league fully organized. That means that as of right now, the teams don't have official names. Rather, it's PWHL Boston, Minnesota, Montreal, New York, Ottawa, and Toronto. Going into the season, fans weren't even sure where they were buying tickets for, the game schedule. The rules were only released today. I kind of avoided making videos on the subject because I honestly didn't want to be overly critical for a league that definitely feels like it's fighting a bit of a battle. Anyway, before today's game, the rule book was officially released, and there are a couple of rules that hockey fans are really interested in. For one, the 3, 2, and 1 point system. The maximum amount of points awarded for a game is 3. If you win, you get 3. If it goes to overtime, the winning team gets 2, the losing team gets 1. Obviously, that's meant to encourage teams from turtling. The other interesting rule addition is the penalty kill. If you manage to get a shorthanded goal, your team's penalty expires, which I think is really interesting and could lead to more aggressive penalty killing. I was actually kind of wondering whether this would cause teams to be a bit more conservative on the power play, but to be honest, the threat of getting scored on is already more than losing the power play anyway. I just think it's a neat little bit of excitement. Anyway, as for the game itself, as I mentioned, I was very impressed by the level of play, especially the physicality. I'm used to women's hockey having no hitting and just the occasional contact. They really emphasized that this was going to be a physical game. All the former players talked about how this is sort of what women have been fighting for, and honestly, it was great to see there were a few hits that I even expected would have been called in the men's game that weren't called here. My one complaint would probably be, I would like just a bit more personality overall. Have some fun with it. Right now, it's presented very much like an international hockey event, which is professional, but it's just not quite as fun as in the NHL game. But I think they really want to get the basics down before, they move on and experiment. As for the game itself, it was Toronto versus New York. I'm a Rangers fan. I mean, I'm a Leafs fan too, but I'm mostly a Rangers fan. I think I'll be cheering for New York in the PWHL, and they look phenomenal this game. Ella Shelton had the first goal in PWHL history, and Corrine Schroeder was an absolute brick wall. I thought Toronto looked pretty good as well, but New York honestly had it locked down. But I sat and watched the entire game. I watched it with my daughter. She's only 3, but she's actually really interested in hockey, so it was, kind of cool to say, hey, those are girls. You don't usually get to see that when we watch hockey on TV. My son, he didn't really care. He liked it as much as normal. I do also think it's a shame that Toronto has them playing in such a small rink. Like, I think they were coming in at 3,000 capacity. From what I hear, ticket sales have been strong, so I would have liked them to get in a bit of a larger arena. I also will note that I thought they did a really good job of marketing the game. They had it live on YouTube and were interacting with the chat. There were 15,000 people watching, which I thought was pretty cool. The game was fully online to watch afterwards, plus it was also on Sportsnet Plus or Sportsnet Now and free on CBC, so if you're Canadian, it's very easy to watch it. I would really like to see more NHL integration though. Like, the NHL only stands to benefit from a partnership with the PWHL. Like, some teams I saw were supporting their women's counterparts, like the Maple Leafs put out a few posts. The Rangers, I was kind of disappointed, didn't do anything. The NHL made one post. I get it, they had their Winter Classic today, sort of their own thing, but it would have been a nice opportunity for some cross promotion, and I really hope that's something we can get moving forward. Anyway, I'm quite interested in tomorrow evening's game. It's Montreal versus Ottawa. Interesting because Montreal has arguably the greatest female hockey player alive right now, Marie-Philip Poulin, as well as Anne-Renee Desbiens, while Ottawa has one of the other big Canadian guns, Brianne Jenner. I will say, if you're already into women's hockey, like, this is a really interesting league because because you're seeing so many high caliber players spread out over just 6 teams. A lot of players that know each other, a lot of the Canadians and Americans really hate each other. You can pick that up by watching the game. So an interesting season to come. Anyway, they'll be playing 24 regular season games before the playoffs. And my final note, why not come to Halifax? Halifax would absolutely fill up the Metro Center, the Scotiabank Center for PWHL. It would be one of the biggest shows in town. It's close to New York, Boston, Toronto, Montreal. Think about it. But that's all for me. See you soon.